The moment I held my house keys should have been pure joy, but instead I was staring at court papers. My own parents were suing me for stealing my sister's future. My name is... Well, let me start from the beginning. At 29 years old, I had finally achieved what felt impossible. After working every job imaginable since I was 16, paying my own way through college, clearing my crushing student loans, and saving every penny for years, I held the keys to my very own home. This small house represented everything I had fought for: independence, security, and proof that I could survive without depending on anyone. But as I stood in my empty living room that first day, my phone buzzed with a message that would shatter everything. My father's text was cold and brief. "Check your mail. You brought this on yourself." 3 hours later, I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by legal documents that seemed impossible to comprehend. My own parents, Jasper and Miranda, were suing me for 70% of my home's value, $154,000. Their claim? That I had stolen my sister's future by buying a house instead of funding her college education. The legal papers actually used those exact words: theft of family resources and abandonment of moral obligations. I read them over and over, my hands shaking, unable to process that the people who gave me life were now trying to take everything I had worked for. Growing up in Minneapolis, our family of 4 lived in what looked like the perfect middle-class American dream from the outside. My father worked as an insurance adjuster. My mother was a part-time dental receptionist, and there was me and my sister Willow, who was 8 years younger. But behind our suburban facade, money was always the source of explosive arguments and whispered conversations that stopped whenever I walked into a room. Despite both parents having steady jobs, we lived paycheck to paycheck. Not because of insufficient income, but because of spectacularly poor financial management. Bills would pile up on our kitchen counter like monuments to chaos, and the tension in our house was suffocating. What crushed my spirit most as a child was the devastatingly obvious difference in how my parents treated Willow and me. From her earliest years, they declared her the special one, the child with limitless potential who could really be somebody someday. Their eyes would light up when they spoke about her natural talents and bright future. When they looked at me, I saw something entirely different: resignation, disappointment, the clear message that I was ordinary, average, nothing worth investing in. By age 14, I had completely internalized this brutal assessment of my worth. I became the practical daughter, the responsible one who did not need dreams or support. I started helping our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chun, with household tasks after school, earning $10 an hour to buy my own school supplies and clothes. My parents never asked where these things came from. They simply seemed relieved not to provide them. At 16, I landed my first real job at Moonlight Bakery, 6 blocks from home. Every day after school, I would walk there directly, work until 7:30, then drag myself home to tackle homework that kept me up until midnight or later. The owner, Rosa, became more than a boss. She was the mentor I desperately needed, teaching me about customer service, money management, and the critical importance of saving for the future. The day I received my first paycheck should have been pure excitement. Instead, my father cornered me at our kitchen table with a calculator and a crushing announcement. "Now that you are earning money, you need to contribute to this household," he said, sliding the calculator toward me. 30% of your earnings should come to us for rent, food, and utilities. I stared at him in complete disbelief. "But Dad, I am only 16. I thought I should be saving for college." My mother laughed from the doorway, a sound that still haunts me. "College? Be realistic. With your grades, you would be better off learning a trade. Besides, Willow will need a college fund. She has a real future ahead of her." That 30% rule became my prison throughout high school. I never missed a single payment, even as I watched my sister receive gift after expensive gift. Willow got $200 monthly piano lessons, ballet classes 3 times weekly, and a complete room makeover with beautiful furniture, while I still slept in the same tiny twin bed from childhood. My schedule became absolutely brutal but grimly predictable. School from 8 to 3, work from 3:30 to 7:30, homework until midnight or beyond. Weekends meant double shifts at the bakery while other teenagers enjoyed freedom and fun. Summer breaks were spent working full-time instead of being a normal teenager. The rare occasions when I bought something new for myself were met with harsh judgment. Another new shirt? My mother would sneer. You should be more responsible with your money. This criticism came from the woman who had just spent $300 on a special ballet costume for Willow. During my junior year, I secretly picked up a second job at the local library on weekends. I told my parents it was for extra spending money, but in reality, I was building a hidden college fund. The library paid less than the bakery, but it offered something invaluable: quiet hours to study during slow periods, which dramatically improved my grades. Mrs. Chun, who had become like a grandmother to me, noticed my complete exhaustion during one of our sessions. "Sweet girl, you are working yourself to death," she said, pouring me hot chocolate with trembling hands. "What are you saving for that requires such sacrifice?" When I explained my situation through tears, her eyes filled with heartbreak. "Your parents should be supporting your dreams, not the other way around," she whispered. She began paying me extra money, insisting I put every penny directly into my college fund. By senior year, despite my crushing work schedule, I had maintained a 3.8 GPA and saved nearly $8,000 for college. My guidance counselor helped me apply for scholarships and financial aid, believing in me when my own family refused to. When acceptance letters started arriving, my parents seemed more irritated than proud. "College is expensive," my father warned ominously. "Do not come crying to us when you cannot afford it." I assured him I would not. After all, I never had before. When I received my acceptance letter from State University with a partial academic scholarship, terror and pride battled in my chest. The scholarship covered 60% of tuition, but that left 40% plus room and board somehow needing to be paid. My carefully saved $8,000 would barely cover my first-year expenses. Over dinner one night, I excitedly shared the news, foolishly hoping for at least some acknowledgement of my achievement. "State University," my father commented without looking up from his plate. "That is expensive for what it is. You know we cannot help you with that." "I am not asking for help," I replied carefully. "I have my scholarship and savings. I will figure out the rest." My mother sighed dramatically, like I was causing her physical pain. "I do not understand why you need to go at all. You have a perfectly good job at the bakery. Rosa would probably make you assistant manager if you stayed." "Because I want more than that, Mom. I want a career, not just a job." "And what about your contribution to this household?" my father demanded. "How are we supposed to make up that shortfall?" In that devastating moment, I realized they had been counting on my income far longer than I understood. The 30% I had been paying was not about teaching me responsibility. It was about supplementing their budget, so they could afford Willow's expensive activities. I was not their daughter being guided toward independence. I was their income source, their financial safety net. "I am sorry, but I am going to college," I said with surprising firmness. "I have worked for this opportunity and I am taking it." The weeks before I left home were filled with icy silence and passive-aggressive comments. My parents acted like I was abandoning the family rather than pursuing education. Only Willow seemed genuinely happy for me, though at 11 years old, she could not fully understand the toxic tension. Move-in day at the dormitory was a solo experience. My parents claimed they could not take time off work to drive me, so I packed what I could into suitcases and took the bus to campus. My roommate Zara arrived with her entire family, who helped set up her side of the room with coordinated bedding, decorative pillows, and family photos. I unpacked my second-hand sheets and single-framed photo of Willow and me in complete silence. That first night, listening to Zara talk on the phone with her parents about how much she missed them already, I cried silently into my pillow. Not because I missed my family, but because I finally understood how abnormal my relationship with them truly was. The financial reality of college hit like a freight train. Even with my scholarship, the costs were overwhelming. Within my first week, I found a job as a server at a restaurant near campus. The hours were absolutely brutal, 5 to 11 p.m. on weeknights, which meant going straight from classes to work, then returning to study until the early morning hours. Weekends were double shifts that left me too exhausted to socialize with other students. During sophomore year, I added a second job as a teaching assistant for an introductory business course. The The pay was minimal, but it looked impressive on my resume and gave me valuable experience. Between both jobs, I managed to cover my expenses without taking excessive student loans, though I still had to borrow about $10,000 per year. My tiny dorm room became both sanctuary and prison. The desk lamp burned until 3 or 4 in the morning as I struggled to complete assignments after exhausting shifts. Cup noodles became my primary food source, not for the typical college student experience, but because they cost less than $1 per meal. I tracked every single penny in a meticulous budget spreadsheet, calculating exactly how many hours I needed to work each week to survive. Zara eventually moved out, claiming my late-night studying and early morning alarms disrupted her sleep. She was replaced by Kennedy, a scholarship student who also worked part-time. Kennedy understood my situation in a way Zara never could, and we quickly became close friends. My parents help when they can, but there are 5 kids in my family, she explained one night as we both studied late. I am the first to go to college, so I am kind of their experiment. At least they support you emotionally, I said, not meaning to sound bitter but failing completely. Kennedy looked at me with genuine concern. Your family situation sounds really toxic. Have you ever talked to someone about it? Like a therapist? I laughed bitterly. With what time or money? Therapy is a luxury I cannot afford. Despite the crushing challenges, I excelled academically. My finance and business classes felt relevant and practical after years of managing my own severely limited budget. Professors began noticing my work ethic, and one recommended me for a summer internship at Sterling Financial Services after my junior year. The internship was a complete turning point. For the first time, I worked in a professional environment where my contributions were genuinely valued. My supervisor, Marcus, seemed impressed by my determination and practical knowledge. The summer internship paid more than my restaurant and teaching assistant positions combined, allowing me to save a small cushion for senior year. Throughout those college years, communication with my parents remained minimal and almost always centered around money. They rarely called to check on my well-being or academic progress. Instead, phone calls usually began with superficial conversation before inevitably turning to requests. Willow needs new point shoes for ballet. They cost $200. The refrigerator broke. We need $400 for repairs. Willow got accepted to a special summer music camp. It is $2,000. I sent money when I could, justifying it as helping my sister rather than enabling my parents. But each request left me feeling used rather than loved, like an ATM rather than a daughter. In my senior year, I met Dylan in my advanced finance seminar. Smart, kind, and from a genuinely loving family, he represented everything I had never experienced. When he invited me home for Thanksgiving, I witnessed for the first time what a supportive family actually looked like. His parents asked about my classes, my goals, my opinions. They seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not as a resource. Why are you crying? Dylan asked when he found me alone in the guest room that night. Because I did not know families could be like yours, I admitted through tears. I did not know parents could love their children without conditions. That Thanksgiving weekend changed something fundamental in how I viewed family relationships. I began understanding that what I had experienced was neither normal nor healthy. Most importantly, I realized I deserved so much better. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in finance and a minor in business administration. My GPA of 3.7 earned me magna cum laude honors, though no one from my family attended the ceremony. Willow wanted to come, but my parents claimed they could not afford the trip despite it being only a 3-hour drive from home. Marcus had been impressed enough with my internship work to offer me a full-time position at Sterling Financial Services upon graduation. The starting salary of $50,000 per year felt astronomical after years of scraping by on minimum wage jobs. My first major decision was housing. Most of my colleagues chose trendy apartments in expensive neighborhoods, spending 30 to 40% of their income on rent. I opted for a tiny studio apartment in an older building 45 minutes from the office by public transportation. The rent consumed only 20% of my take-home pay, allowing me to focus aggressively on my next financial goals, paying off student loans and saving for a house. I created a detailed 5-year plan, Year 1 would focus on building an emergency fund and beginning serious student loan repayment. Years 2 through 4 would accelerate loan repayment while building a substantial down payment fund. Year 5 would be devoted to house hunting and purchase. My lifestyle remained rigorously frugal despite my professional salary. I brought lunch to work every single day, shopped at discount grocery stores, and continued using public transportation rather than buying a car. Colleagues often invited me to happy hours or weekend trips that I politely declined, knowing each $60 dinner or $300 getaway would delay my goals. Kennedy remained my closest friend, understanding my determination in a way others could not. She had landed a teaching position at a local high school and shared my commitment to financial independence. Most people our age are not thinking about retirement accounts or mortgage rates. She laughed one evening as we reviewed my budget spreadsheet over cheap pizza in my apartment. Most people our age did not have to pay rent to their parents at 16, I replied. My relationship with Dylan had evolved from classmates to close friends to something more complicated. He respected my financial goals, but struggled to understand why I pushed myself so relentlessly. You deserve to enjoy life now, not just prepare for some future that might never come, he would argue during our frequent discussions about my rigid budget. I am enjoying life, I would insist. Financial security is worth more to me than temporary pleasures. Our different perspectives eventually led to a mutual decision to remain friends rather than pursue romance. Though painful, this choice allowed me to maintain complete focus on my goals without compromise. At work, my dedication and financial expertise did not go unnoticed. Within 18 months, I received my first promotion to financial analyst with a salary increase to $62,000. Rather than expanding my lifestyle, I maintained my frugal habits and directed the additional income toward my student loans. By the end of my third year at Sterling, I had completely paid off my $40,000 in student loans, built an emergency fund of $12,000, and begun serious saving for a house down payment. The accomplishment felt monumental, yet I had no one to truly share it with who understood the significance. Throughout this time, my relationship with my family remained strained and completely one-sided. The pattern established during college continued, rare communication except when financial needs arose. Willow was now in high school, excelling in music and academics. My parents spoke of her potential with the same reverence they always had, and their expectations for her future were absolutely grandiose. Willow's piano teacher thinks she could get into Juilliard, my mother announced during one of our infrequent phone calls. Of course, the application process and audition preparation will be expensive. The statement hung in the air like a sword, the unspoken request crystal clear. I had already sent $3,000 that year for various expenses related to Willow's activities. Each time I told myself it was for my sister's benefit, not my parents'. But the line was becoming increasingly blurred. Mom, I have my own financial goals I am working toward, I said carefully. I cannot be Willow's college fund. The silence on the other end was absolutely frigid. I see your sister's future means nothing to you now that you have your fancy job and city apartment. The guilt trip was familiar, but this time something inside me resisted. That is not fair. I have helped a lot over the years, but I cannot be expected to finance another person's education when I just finished paying for my own. The conversation ended poorly, with my mother claiming I had changed, become selfish and cold. These accusations stung deeply, but I held firm to my boundaries for the first time in my life. 2 weeks later, my father called with a more direct approach that left me speechless. Willow got accepted to Westfield University. Full 4-year tuition is $40,000 per year. We need to know how much you can contribute. Westfield was a prestigious private university, known for its arts programs and absolutely astronomical costs. I was stunned by both the assumption I would contribute and the staggering amount in question. Dad, that is over $160,000 total. I do not have that kind of money to give. You make good money now. You could take out a loan to help your sister. That is what family does. The irony of his statement was not lost on me. Family helps each other when they can. No one helped me with my education. That was different. You were always independent. I was not given a choice, I replied, my patience finally completely exhausted. The conversation dissolved into accusations and old resentments. My father eventually hung up after telling me I was breaking my mother's heart with my selfishness. Despite the emotional toll these interactions caused, I remained absolutely committed to my financial plan. When Willow herself called to ask about college funding, I took a completely different approach. I cannot pay your tuition, Willow, but I can help you apply for scholarships, research more affordable schools, and teach you how to manage money so you can be independent like I had to be. Her response genuinely surprised me. I never asked them to put this pressure on you, Amanda. I know how hard you worked for everything you have. That conversation was the first genuine connection I had felt with my sister in years. We began talking more regularly, with me serving as a sounding board and advisor rather than an ATM. I helped her apply for scholarships and financial aid, which resulted in a substantial package from a state university comparable to the one I had attended. My parents were bitterly disappointed by her choice, seeing it as settling for less than she deserved. They continued pressuring me for contributions, which I provided in smaller amounts specifically earmarked for Willow's textbooks or dormitory supplies. By my 5th year at Sterling, now as a senior financial analyst earning $78,000, I had saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest home. My years of sacrifice and iron discipline were about to pay off in the form of the stability I had craved since childhood. What I never anticipated was how my family would react to this milestone, or how their reaction would forever destroy our relationship. House hunting was both exhilarating and terrifying. I had specific criteria: a small but well-maintained home in a safe neighborhood with good public transportation access, priced under $250,000. My real estate agent, Patricia, was incredibly patient as we viewed dozens of properties over 3 months. Most first-time buyers your age are looking for condos or continuing to rent, she commented during one of our search days. It is impressive that you are in a position to buy a house outright. I smiled, feeling a rare moment of genuine pride. I have been working toward this since I was 16. Finally, we found a 1920s bungalow with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small but functional kitchen, and a tiny backyard. At $220,000, it was perfectly within my budget. The inspection revealed no major issues, and the location was ideal, close enough to work but in an affordable neighborhood. Signing the mortgage papers felt completely surreal. Despite years of meticulous planning for this exact moment, I could hardly believe it was actually happening. The loan officer remarked that it was unusual to see someone my age with such a solid financial foundation. Most people your age have minimal credit history and mountains of student debt, he said as I signed the final documents. I paid off my student loans 3 years ago, I replied, unable to keep the pride from my voice. The day I received the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room of my new home, completely overwhelmed with emotion. This house represented not just a financial investment, but a psychological one. It was tangible proof that I had overcome my upbringing, that I could provide for myself what my parents never had: security. Kennedy and Dylan helped me move in, bringing housewarming gifts and champagne to celebrate. We sat on the floor eating pizza since I had not yet purchased furniture. To Amanda, Kennedy toasted, raising her plastic cup, who worked harder than anyone I know to get here. To having roots, Dylan added. Something you deserve more than anyone. After settling in for a few weeks, I decided it was time to invite my family to see the house. Despite our strained relationship, this was a milestone I wanted to share with them. Perhaps I thought naively that seeing my success would finally make them proud. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon, my father critically examining the exterior as they walked up the path to the front door. "It is small," was his first comment upon entering. "Perfect size for me," I replied, trying desperately to maintain a positive tone. My mother walked through the rooms with an expression of faint distaste, touching surfaces and looking for flaws. "This neighborhood is not very upscale, is it?" "It is safe and convenient to my office," I explained patiently. Willow, now in her 2nd year of college, seemed genuinely happy for me. "I think it is awesome, Amanda. You worked so hard for this." I had prepared lunch, hoping to create a pleasant atmosphere for what I hoped might be a new chapter in our family dynamics. As we sat at my new dining table, the conversation initially remained superficial, focused on neighborhood amenities and commute times. Then my mother set down her fork and cleared her throat ominously. Willow has some news she needs to share. Willow looked down at her plate, clearly uncomfortable. I might have to take a break from school next semester. What? Why? I asked, genuinely concerned. The scholarship I had for this year was not renewed, she explained quietly. And my student loan application was denied because of Dad's credit score. We have had some financial setbacks, my father said defensively. Medical bills, car repairs. You know how it is. So what is the plan? I asked, already sensing where this conversation was heading with growing dread. Well, my mother began, her tone shifting to one I recognized all too well. We thought given your new purchase that you must be in a very comfortable financial position. I just bought a house. I am not exactly flush with cash right now. But surely you must have savings left. Or you could take out a home equity loan, my father suggested casually, as if he was discussing the weather. Willow needs about $20,000 for this year. I stared at them in complete disbelief. I used all my savings for the down payment, and I am absolutely not going to borrow against my house that I just bought. So you are just going to let your sister drop out of college? My mother asked, her voice rising dramatically. After everything we have done for you, my father added. The absolute absurdity of their statement left me momentarily speechless. What exactly have you done for me? I have been working and supporting myself since I was 16. I paid for my own education. I bought this house entirely on my own. We raised you, my father said indignantly. We put a roof over your head. A roof I paid rent for as a teenager. I countered. The argument escalated quickly and viciously. My parents accused me of being selfish, of forgetting where I came from, of abandoning family in their time of need. I pointed out the years of financial support I had already provided, the complete lack of support I had received, and the unfairness of expecting me to mortgage my future for Willow. You have always been jealous of the attention Willow received, my mother declared with venom in her voice. This is your way of punishing her for being more talented. This has absolutely nothing to do with Willow, I insisted. This is about boundaries and reasonable expectations. Willow, who had remained silent throughout the argument, finally spoke up. Please stop fighting. I will figure something out. I can take a semester off and work full-time to save money. Absolutely not, my mother snapped. You are not throwing away your future because your sister is too selfish to help. I turned to Willow directly. I can help you look into additional scholarship options or maybe work-study programs. There are alternatives to dropping out or going into massive debt. The only alternative is for you to step up and do the right thing, my father insisted. Family takes care of family. I have been taking care of this family financially since I was a teenager, I said, my patience finally completely exhausted. I am done being your ATM. My father stood up abruptly, his face red with anger. If that is how you feel, then perhaps we need to reconsider what family means. You clearly have the resources to help but are choosing not to. This house represents years of sacrifice and hard work, I said firmly. I am not jeopardizing that. That house should be helping secure Willow's future, not sitting here as a monument to your selfishness, my mother declared with absolute hatred in her voice. As they prepared to leave, my father delivered a parting shot that would prove terrifyingly prophetic. This is not over, Amanda. If you will not do the right thing voluntarily, there are other ways to ensure family obligations are met. I assumed it was an empty threat, the kind of dramatic statement my parents often made during arguments. I was devastatingly wrong. 3 weeks after that disastrous family visit, I received an envelope from the county court that would change everything. Inside was a summons informing me that I was being sued by Jasper and Miranda Collins, my parents, for 70% of the value of my home, approximately $154,000. The legal complaint alleged that I had a moral and implied financial obligation to support my sister's education, and that my purchase of a home instead constituted financial abandonment and theft of family resources. The document actually used the phrase, stealing her sister's future, to describe my home purchase. I sat on my living room floor, legal papers scattered around me, unable to process what I was reading. This could not be real. Parents do not sue their children over money. They do not drag family disputes into courtrooms. Yet the official seal and case number confirmed this was no joke or empty threat. My hands shook violently as I dialed my parents' number, expecting and hoping that this was some elaborate scare tactic we could still resolve. My father answered on the fourth ring. Yes. Dad, I just received court papers. Are you and Mom actually suing me? We are simply seeking what is fair, he replied, his tone eerily calm and calculated. You refused to help your sister voluntarily, so we are pursuing legal means. This is absolutely insane. You cannot possibly think a court will force me to give you my house money. Our lawyer thinks we have a strong case based on family obligation and implied contract. You benefited from family resources growing up. Now you owe a return on that investment. The conversation became increasingly surreal as my father outlined their position, as if it were perfectly reasonable to sue one's own child. Dad, please, this will completely destroy any relationship we still have. I pleaded desperately. That is your choice, Amanda. Do the right thing, and we can put this behind us. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for nearly an hour before finally calling Kennedy. She arrived at my house 30 minutes later with wine and fierce determination to help. This cannot be legal, she insisted, reading through the documents with growing outrage. They cannot just claim a right to your house because they want the money. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in my entire career, and began searching desperately for a lawyer. By noon, I had an appointment with Rebecca Martinez, an attorney specializing in family law. Rebecca's office was warm and inviting, contrasting sharply with the cold reality of my situation. After reviewing the documents carefully, she looked up at me with a mixture of sympathy and professional assessment. I have seen some contentious family disputes in my 20 years of practice, she said slowly. But parents suing a child for buying their own home is certainly unique. So they cannot actually take 70% of my house? I asked desperately. There is no legal principle that would entitle parents to their adult child's assets based on an implied obligation to a sibling, she explained reassuringly. The problem is that defending yourself will still cost money and emotional energy. We discussed strategy, documentation I should gather, and the timeline for responding to the lawsuit. Rebecca advised me to compile evidence of my financial independence, including tax returns showing I had not been claimed as a dependent since age 18, proof of paying for my own education, and documentation of money I had already given to my family over the years. Their case hinges on the idea that you owe them something, she explained. We need to demonstrate clearly that if anything, the balance is tilted in the other direction. The next few weeks were a blur of legal preparations, crushing anxiety, and disrupted sleep. My work performance suffered as I struggled to concentrate on anything other than the lawsuit. Fortunately, Marcus had become something of a mentor over the years and noticed my distraction immediately. When I finally explained the situation, his reaction validated what I had begun to understand. Amanda, what your parents are doing is not normal, he said firmly. It is exploitative and abusive. Hearing someone in a position of authority name the dynamic so clearly was both painful and liberating. I had spent so many years normalizing my family's behavior, making excuses, and accepting blame. Now outsiders were confirming what I had only recently begun to acknowledge. My relationship with my parents was fundamentally unhealthy and destructive. Support came from unexpected places. Colleagues offered encouragement and practical help. My neighbors, upon hearing snippets of the situation, brought meals during particularly stressful days of legal preparation. Even Dylan, despite our complicated history, became a steady presence, helping me organize financial records and providing emotional support. Kennedy suggested I find a therapist to help process the emotional impact of the lawsuit. This is trauma, Amanda. You need professional support to work through it. I found Dr. Chen, a therapist specializing in family estrangement and financial abuse, who offered sliding scale fees. Our sessions helped me recognize patterns of manipulation and begin unraveling the guilt that had been instilled in me since childhood. Your parents created a narrative where your role was to provide, not to be provided for, Dr. Chen explained during one session. Children are not supposed to be financial assets to their parents. That reverses the natural order of nurturing. As the court date approached, I received an unexpected phone call from Willow. We had not spoken since the disastrous lunch at my house. "Amanda, I just found out about the lawsuit," she said, her voice shaking. "I had no idea they were doing this. I never asked them to sue you." "You did not know?" I asked, surprised. "No, I would never want this. I am so sorry they are putting you through this." Her call reinforced what Rebecca had advised, to separate my feelings about Willow from my feelings about my parents. Willow was as much a victim of their dysfunctional expectations as I was, just in a different way. The lawsuit consumed my thoughts completely and invaded my dreams. I had nightmares about becoming homeless, about judges ordering me to hand over my house keys to my parents. During waking hours, I obsessively checked my bank accounts and calculated how I would survive if the impossible happened, and I lost the case. Rebecca reassured me repeatedly that such an outcome was extremely unlikely. "The law simply does not work the way your parents think it does," she explained patiently. "Parents cannot force adult children to pay for their siblings' education, no matter how much they believe it is morally right." Still, the mere existence of the lawsuit felt like a profound violation. The home that should have represented security and achievement had become a source of anxiety and conflict. The parents who should have celebrated my milestone were attempting to steal it from me. As we prepared for court, Rebecca helped me gather evidence of financial contributions I had already made to my family. Bank statements showed transfers totaling over $15,000 over the past decade. Willow provided a written statement confirming she had not asked for or expected my financial support for her education. "We have a strong case both factually and legally," Rebecca assured me the night before our court date. "Try to get some rest." Rest, however, proved completely elusive as I contemplated facing my parents across a courtroom, our private family dysfunction on public display, our broken relationship formalized in court records. The final severance of what little connection remained felt both inevitable and devastating. The county courthouse was an imposing stone building that seemed designed to intimidate anyone who entered. I arrived early with Rebecca, dressed in a conservative navy suit that I hoped projected confidence I absolutely did not feel. We set up at the defendant's table, arranging our documentation in neat folders. "Remember, speak only when addressed by the judge," Rebecca reminded me quietly. "Let me handle all the arguments. If you need to respond to something, write it down and pass it to me." My parents arrived with their attorney, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual frown that suggested he took no joy in his work. They did not acknowledge me as they took their seats at the plaintiff's table. My mother stared straight ahead with ice-cold determination, while my father whispered urgently to their lawyer. The physical proximity yet emotional distance created a surreal, nightmarish atmosphere. Judge Margaret Harrison entered the courtroom, a woman in her 60s with silver hair, and an expression that suggested she had seen absolutely everything in her years on the bench. After preliminary introductions, she reviewed the case file with a deeply furrowed brow that did not bode well for my parents. "I have been on the bench for 17 years, she began, looking over her reading glasses at both parties with obvious skepticism. "I must say this is one of the more unusual family disputes I have encountered. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, you are suing your daughter for 70% of the value of her home to pay for your younger daughter's college education. Is that correct?" My parents' lawyer stood with obvious discomfort. "Yes, Your Honor. My clients believe their elder daughter has a moral obligation to support her sister's education, particularly given the family's financial contributions to her upbringing." Judge Harrison's expression remained neutral, but her tone sharpened noticeably. "Moral obligations and legal obligations are not always the same thing, counselor. Please explain the legal basis for your claim." What followed was a tortuous argument about implied family contracts and conditional support during minority. The lawyer claimed that by accepting parental support as a child, I had implicitly agreed to a reciprocal obligation to support my sister. Rebecca took notes calmly beside me, occasionally squeezing my arm reassuringly when particularly outrageous claims were made. When it was her turn to speak, She rose with composed confidence that filled me with hope. Your Honor, this case has absolutely no basis in family law or contract law, she began firmly. Miss Collins was a minor child under her parents' care, which is a legal obligation parents voluntarily assume when they have children. Children do not contract to receive basic necessities from their parents. She methodically dismantled each argument, presenting documentation of my financial independence since age 16, including tax returns showing I had not been claimed as a dependent since high school, proof of self-financing my education, and bank records showing substantial financial assistance I had already provided to my family over the years. Far from taking from the family, Miss Collins has contributed over $15,000 to her parents and sister since she was 18. Money she was under no legal obligation to provide, Rebecca explained, submitting the bank records as evidence. The judge reviewed the documents with obvious interest. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, were you aware of these financial contributions from your daughter? My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Those were gifts not related to this matter. $15,000 in gifts seems quite generous from someone you are characterizing as selfish and unwilling to support family, Judge Harrison observed with barely concealed incredulity. My mother spoke for the first time, her voice dripping with entitlement. That money was nothing compared to what Willow needs for her education. Amanda has a good job and just bought a house. She clearly has resources she is withholding. The judge turned to me directly. Miss Collins, what is your current financial situation after purchasing your home? With Rebecca's nod of approval, I explained my careful budgeting, the years of saving for a down payment, and my current mortgage obligations. I am not wealthy, Your Honor. I worked multiple jobs through college, paid off my student loans through strict budgeting, and saved for years to afford a modest home. I simply cannot afford to pay for another person's entire education without jeopardizing my own financial security. Judge Harrison nodded thoughtfully before turning back to my parents with obvious displeasure. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, what financial planning did you do for your younger daughter's education? My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances that spoke volumes. We expected scholarships would cover most costs, my father finally admitted. Willow is very talented. And did you not make the same expectation for your elder daughter's education? The judge pressed relentlessly. Amanda was always independent, my mother said dismissively, as if that explained everything. Because I was given no choice, I interjected immediately, regretting breaking protocol but unable to stop myself. The judge gave me a measured look, but did not reprimand me. Instead, she directed her next question to my parents with laser focus. Did you contribute financially to Miss Collins' college education? We could not afford to at the time, my father replied defensively. Yet you expected her to afford her sister's education now. Judge Harrison's tone made her skepticism crystal clear. The proceedings continued with testimony about family dynamics and financial expectations. My parents' lawyer tried desperately to frame the situation as a simple family dispute where the court should enforce fairness between siblings. Rebecca countered by emphasizing the legal autonomy of adult children and the complete absence of any contractual obligation. As the arguments wound down, the courtroom door opened quietly, and Willow slipped in, taking a seat in the back row. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a mixture of embarrassment and determination in her expression that gave me hope. After a final round of statements, Judge Harrison called for a 15-minute recess to review all evidence before making her ruling. As we waited in suffocating tension, Willow approached our table hesitantly. Can I speak to the judge? She asked Rebecca quietly. About what? Rebecca inquired cautiously. About the fact that I never asked for any of this and do not want Amanda to pay for my education this way. Rebecca explained that the judge might or might not allow additional testimony at this stage, but advised Willow to stay close in case an opportunity arose. When Judge Harrison returned, she surprised everyone by calling Willow forward. I understand you are Willow Collins, the younger sister whose education is at the center of this dispute. Do you wish to make a statement to the court? Willow stood nervously at the center of the courtroom, but her voice was clear and strong. Yes, Your Honor. I want to make absolutely clear that I never asked my parents to sue my sister. I did not know about this lawsuit until recently, I would never want Amanda to be forced to pay for my education, especially not by giving up her home that she worked so hard to buy. My mother made a small noise of protest, which the judge silenced with a stern look that could have frozen fire. Willow continued, gaining confidence. Amanda has always helped me when she could. She helped me apply for scholarships and financial aid. She taught me how to budget and manage money, skills our parents never taught either of us. I have options for continuing my education without taking anything from my sister. Judge Harrison thanked Willow for her statement, and then delivered her ruling with the force of absolute authority. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony in this matter, I find the plaintiff's claim wholly without merit. There is absolutely no legal basis for forcing an adult child to finance a sibling's education, regardless of any perceived moral obligation. Furthermore, the evidence clearly shows that Miss Amanda Collins has already provided substantial financial support to her family over the years, far beyond any reasonable expectation. She continued, addressing my parents directly with barely concealed disgust. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, the court is deeply troubled by your apparent different treatment of your daughters. You seem to have expected financial independence from one while assuming ongoing support for the other. This is not a matter for legal remedy, but rather family counseling. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning it could never be refiled, and in a final unexpected move, ordered my parents to pay my legal fees, stating that their lawsuit was frivolous and potentially malicious. As the courtroom began to clear, I remained seated, completely overwhelmed by the finality of what had just occurred. The legal battle was over, but the emotional damage felt absolutely irreparable. My parents left without speaking to me, their rigid backs and quickened pace conveying their fury at the outcome. Willow approached tentatively. Amanda, I am so incredibly sorry about all of this. It is not your fault, I assured her, my voice barely above a whisper. Can we talk? Maybe get coffee or something. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further. Whatever came next in our family relationships, nothing would ever be the same again. The lawsuit had forced a confrontation with decades of dysfunction that could no longer be ignored or excused. As Rebecca gathered our materials, she offered a gentle observation. Family estrangement is painful, Amanda, but sometimes it is absolutely necessary for healing to begin. You have legally established your right to boundaries. Now you can start the process of establishing emotional boundaries as well. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, grief, and surprisingly, hope. For the first time in my life, I had publicly stood up for myself against my parents' expectations and demands. Though the victory felt hollow given the circumstances, it represented a crucial first step toward a healthier future. The days following the court hearing passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. Relief that the legal threat to my home was completely gone mixed with profound sadness about the state of my family relationships. I took a week off work to process what had happened, spending quiet days in the house that had become both sanctuary and battleground. I did not hear from my parents, nor did I expect to. The courtroom had made explicit what had been implicit for years. Our relationship was fundamentally broken, built on obligation rather than love, expectation rather than acceptance. The lawsuit had not created this dysfunction, but merely exposed it in the harshest possible light. Rebecca had recommended continuing therapy, advice I took very seriously. Dr. Chen helped me understand that grief for a relationship that never existed is still valid grief. You are mourning the parents you deserved but never had, she explained during one particularly emotional session. That loss is real, even if the relationship itself was unhealthy. We worked on establishing what she called internal boundaries, the emotional counterpart to the legal boundaries the court had affirmed. I learned to recognize and challenge the voice of guilt that had been instilled in me since childhood, the poisonous belief that I was selfish for having needs and wants of my own. 2 weeks after the court case, Willow and I met for coffee at a neutral location. The conversation was awkward at first. Years of family dynamics creating an invisible barrier between us that we had to work to overcome. I moved out of Mom and Dad's house, she said after preliminary small talk had been exhausted. I am staying with my friend Sophia until I figure things out. Are you still in school? I asked with genuine concern. She nodded determinedly. I reduced my course load and got a job at the campus bookstore. It will take me longer to graduate, but I will get there eventually. I also applied for additional scholarships like you suggested. I am so proud of you, Willow, I said, meaning it completely. Taking control of your own path is not easy. I had a good example, she replied, meeting my eyes directly. I always admired how independent you were, even though I did not understand until recently that it was not by choice. That conversation marked the beginning of a completely new relationship between us. One based on mutual respect rather than the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered. Willow began sharing her struggles and triumphs with me as a peer rather than as the favored child seeking handouts. As months passed, I slowly rebuilt my life around truth rather than family mythology. My home, now free from legal threat, became a true haven. I painted walls in colors that made me happy, planted a small garden, and gradually furnished rooms with pieces that brought me genuine joy. Each improvement felt like an affirmation of my right to create security for myself. Work provided another source of stability and growth. Marcus, understanding the personal crisis I had weathered, offered me additional responsibilities that led to another promotion. The increased income allowed me to start a modest investment portfolio, furthering my goal of long-term financial security. Kennedy remained a steadfast friend, celebrating small victories and providing perspective during moments of doubt. You know what amazes me most about you? She said during a Saturday spent helping me install kitchen shelves. Your capacity for joy despite everything. You never became bitter. Her observation surprised me, as I had not recognized this quality in myself. But she was right. Despite the family dysfunction, I had not allowed it to define my entire worldview. I still found pleasure in small things, still believed in the possibility of healthy relationships. Inspired by my own journey, I started a blog about financial independence for young adults from difficult family backgrounds. The response was absolutely overwhelming, with hundreds of comments from people sharing similar experiences. What began as a personal outlet evolved into an online support community, with regular video chats and resource sharing. Through this platform, I connected with others who understood the particular challenges of building stability without family support. We discussed practical matters like building credit and emergency funds, but also emotional issues like setting boundaries and managing guilt. The community became an unexpected source of healing, a powerful reminder that shared experience diminishes isolation. 6 months after the court case, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. The envelope sat unopened on my counter for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. Amanda, it began. The past months have given me time to reflect on our relationship and my role as your mother. While I still believe families should support each other, I recognize now that we placed unfair burdens on you from a young age. This realization has been painful to acknowledge. The letter continued with an awkward but seemingly genuine attempt at apology, stopping short of taking full responsibility, but acknowledging that mistakes had been made. She requested a meeting to begin healing our family, a phrase that simultaneously triggered hope and deep skepticism. After discussing the letter extensively with Dr. Chen, I agreed to meet my mother at a cafe near my office, a public place where I could leave if necessary. The meeting was tense and uncomfortable, with long silences and extremely careful word choices. Your father still believes we were right, she admitted toward the end of our conversation. But I miss having you in my life. I cannot return to the old dynamic, I told her with absolute firmness. Any relationship we have moving forward has to be based on mutual respect, not obligation. She nodded slowly, uncertainty clear in her eyes. I am not sure what that looks like, but I would like to try. This tentative reconnection was neither a fairy tale reconciliation nor a complete failure. Over subsequent months, my mother and I established a careful, extremely limited relationship. We met occasionally for coffee, keeping conversations focused on neutral topics. My father remained completely distant, unwilling or unable to acknowledge the damage done, though he stopped actively hostile behavior. A year after buying my house, I hosted a small anniversary gathering. Willow attended, bringing her new boyfriend and a homemade cake that tasted like love and forgiveness. Kennedy and Dylan came, along with colleagues who had supported me during the lawsuit. My mother declined the invitation with a polite note, perhaps understanding that full family reconciliation, if it ever came, was still far in the future. As I looked around at the people who had chosen to be in my life, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide, I recognized the profound shift in my understanding of family. Family was not merely biological connection or obligation, but a community built on mutual support and genuine care. The house that had become a point of such devastating contention was now unquestionably mine. Not just legally, but emotionally. Each mortgage payment felt like an affirmation. Each home improvement a declaration of my right to create stability for myself. The most valuable lesson from this painful journey was understanding the crucial difference between guilt and responsibility. For years, I had carried crushing guilt about not meeting my parents' expectations, about prioritizing my needs, about setting boundaries. Therapy and experience had taught me that responsibility to oneself is not selfishness, but essential self-preservation. That boundaries are not walls but healthy definitions of where one person ends and another begins. I still had moments of doubt and sadness, days when I mourned the family relationships I would never have. But these episodes became less frequent and less intense as I built a life aligned with my own values rather than imposed expectations. As I stand in my kitchen today, preparing for another day in the home I fought so fiercely to protect, I realize that true freedom comes not from external validation, but from internal conviction. My parents may never fully understand or accept my choices, but their understanding is no longer necessary for my peace. This house is more than wooden beams and mortgage payments. It represents my fundamental right to define my own path, to establish healthy boundaries, and to create security on my own terms. The journey here was longer and harder than it should have been, but that only makes the achievement more meaningful. What would you do if faced with a choice between family expectations and your own well-being? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is not selfish but absolutely necessary. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the family you choose can be as meaningful as the family you were born into. Please subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of resilience, family drama, and triumph over adversity. Your support means the world to us, and there are so many more powerful stories to share. Hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads.